Hey guys, so today we're going to look at the absolute value. So first, what is absolute value? Absolute value is just a number's distance from zero. It's a distance, and if you think about it, how far away from something you are can never be negative. So absolute value, in essence, just takes whatever your number is and make sure it's positive. So let's think about this. If the absolute value of x is 7, what are the possible values of x? So obviously 7 is 7 units away from 0, but what else is 7 units away from 0? Negative 7. Easy enough. Okay. If x, the absolute value of x is negative 4, what are the possible values of x? Well, again, we just said that absolute value is a distance, and distance can't be negative. If you put your car in reverse, it doesn't rewind your odometer. It's still going. So there are no possible values for this one. So anytime you have an absolute value equal to a negative number or anything less than 0, if it's the absolute value of x is less than 0, then you don't have a solution there. But you have to make sure that your absolute value is isolated. So just like you would any other equation, you have to isolate your variable. In this case, you have to isolate your whole absolute value first, and then see what happens. So the steps, again, step 1 is isolate. Get the absolute value by itself. And then you're going to create your two cases. Now, this is the kind of shortcut. We'll talk about why it works in a second. You take the inside part of your absolute value, whatever's in between the bars, and you set it equal to the positive of whatever's over here and the negative of whatever's over there. So you're going to set up two different equations for these. Now, after you have the two equations set up, they won't have absolute value bars anymore because you just set the inside part equal to the positive and negative of the value. Then you solve both cases. Now, sometimes you'll get an answer, but it doesn't work. You always have to check your answers. And if you get an answer, but it doesn't work, that's called an extraneous solution, an extra one. It don't work. You always got to check. So extraneous solutions are solutions that don't actually solve the original equation. I can't type, sorry. So you always have to check for extraneous solutions. So let's just give it a go. So again, what's the first step? Isolate. Okay, I got absolute value of x minus 9 equals 5. The absolute value is by itself. Step 1 done. Now, what exactly is the absolute value? If we go back and look, it's the distance from 0. So we know either 7 or negative 7 would work here. So either x is 7 or negative x would be 7 is what that really means. So in essence, we're saying either x minus 9 equals 5 or the negative of that, because remember, the absolute value just makes everything positive. Now we do skip a step here usually. Instead of writing it like this, we automatically divide through by a -1, which will cancel these negatives out, leaving us with the inside part equal to the negative of our original value. So usually we don't want to write this. That's extra. We don't need to do it. You take the inside part and set it equal to the positive. You take the inside part and set it equal to the negative. That's it. Now we're going to solve these things. So I have x minus 9 equals 5. I just need to add 9 to both sides. And I get x is 14. Add 9 to both sides here as well. But this time I get x equals 4. So are we done? No. We have two answers. That's step 3. We solved them. We need to check our answers. Again, we might get an answer that doesn't really work. So if I plug 14 in here, what's 14 minus 9? Well, 14 minus 9 is 5. Absolute value of 5 is 5. That checks out. 4, let's see. What's 4 minus 9? Negative 5. What's the absolute value of negative 5? Oh, yeah, it's also 5. So that checks out. So you don't actually have to write out your check, just make sure you do it. So you can plug it in your head, you can plug it in your calculator. You should probably get that out. Okay, it's gonna take a minute. Now let's look at another example. So this one is slightly different. We actually have to isolate our absolute value. It's not already isolated for us. So what's in the way of this absolute value being by itself? Well, if it's confusing like that, you can think of it as just a symbol. So let's put a smiley face. You could also use an X or something. So how do I get this smiley face or meh face by itself? Well, I've got divided by -2 here, so I need to multiply by -2. And that's exactly what we need to do here. We need to multiply both sides of our equation by our denominator. We got a denominator. We only have one denominator, so to get rid of it, we multiply by this denominator because that is our LCD. So same process applies. So if I do this, the negatives cancel out. I'm left with absolute value, don't drop that off until you actually set up both equations, of y minus 10 is equal to -6 times -2 is +12. All right, now that's step 1 done, isolate it. Step 2, create our two equations. So I'm going to take the shortcut. The inside part, y minus 10, equals the positive, and the inside part equals the negative. And we just solve these two equations. Y is 22, y is -2. All I did was add 10 to both sides on both equations. Check it. 22 minus 10. Well, that's 12. Absolute value of 12. Well, that's still 12. Divided by -2, that's a -6. Good. Check. -2. Let's see, -2 minus 10. If that confuses you, it is -12. But if it confuses you, just use your calculator. Let me wait for it to pop up. -2 minus 10, believe it or not, is -12. -12's absolute value, 12. There is an absolute value on this calculator, which is the calculator I suggested that you get. This is different up here, but it's the FX115ES Plus. If you hit Shift, Hype, you see your absolute value bars. So you can plug it in. -2 minus 10, and put it in a fraction over -2. And that does give us -6, so that one checks out as well. So both of these checked out, we're good to go. No extraneous roots there. Let's try this one. Okay, to isolate it, I need to divide by 16. Divide by 16. I get absolute value of r minus 5 equals -2. Let's check. -32 over 16. Yep, that's -2. Okay, so I've got my absolute value isolated. I'm going to set up my two equations. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. Why not? That says absolute value is equal to a negative. I'm done. There is no possible way that can happen. No matter what r is, the absolute value of this expression here will not be negative. So this one is automatically no solution. If you have your absolute value equal to a negative after you've isolated it, you're done. There's no solution to that. All right, let's try this one. So I need to isolate my absolute value, not my h, the absolute value. So I'm going to divide by 2. Those 2's will cancel. I'm left with absolute value of h plus 8. Don't drop off those absolute values. You didn't use them yet. I'm going to take what's inside my absolute value, set it equal to the positive, take what's inside my absolute value, and set it equal to the negative. So now I'm going to solve. I need to get h by itself. I'm solving for h. So the easiest way for me to do that is subtract h from both sides. I get 8 equals 6h. And you could have, got this 7h to the other side and the 8 to the other side. Doesn't matter. You'll just have negative and negative here. But now I need to solve for h, so I divide by 6. I get 8 over 6, which simplifies to 4/3. If you don't know how to simplify a fraction, use your calculator. 8 over 6 is 4/3. And this SD button is very handy if you ever need to put it as a decimal. Again, subtract h from both sides. I get 8 equals, well, negative 7h minus h is negative 8h. So this is going to be a little bit nicer. Divide through by negative 8. I get negative 1 equals h. Okay, so let me go back and check my solutions. So I'm going to plug 4/3 into here. I'd highly advise using your calculator, especially with fractions. So 2 times the absolute value of 4/3 plus 8. Make sure you get out of there. This should equal, okay, it equals 56/3. We need that to equal 14h. So let's remember 56/3. 14 times 4/3 is 56/3. So we get the same thing on the left as we do on the right side of our equation. So that checks out. All right. Negative 1. Let's plug it in there. Okay. Instead of 4/3, I'm going to put a negative 1. And this gives me 14. Okay. If I plug negative 1 in for h on the right side of the equation, I get negative 14. That's not the same as 14. So guess what? This is an extraneous root. So my only answer for this particular problem is 4/3. This one, the negative 1 did not work. It did not solve our equation because once we plugged it in, we got negative 14 over here instead of a positive. So can't do it. Doesn't work. Just 4/3. So I only had one solution on this one. Last one. Process is not too terrible. So, oh, hey, look, my absolute value is already isolated. Cool. Set up my two equations. My inside part equals my expression over here. Now, these are both negative, but that's okay because this is a W. We don't know what W is, so this could be a positive once we plug in W. I don't know. We don't know. We just got to solve it and see. If it turns out to not work, we'll just have two extraneous roots, extraneous solutions. So I'll set it exactly like that. Okay, that's my first equation. My inside part equals the negative of this. So I'm actually going to write it out. Negative 4W minus 2. And don't forget to distribute the negative. You can put a negative 1 if you really want to. It's an understood 1 there. Let me simplify that while I'm over here. Negative times negative is positive, 4w plus 2. Okay, now I can solve both of these equations. I'm going to get my w's on the left side and my numbers on the right. Why not? You're advanced enough in your algebra. I think you can do more than one step at a time, so let's do it. I'm going to add 4w to both sides. I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. 6w plus 4w is 10w. That looks like a 16. Come on, draw 0. There we go. 10w. 20 minus 20 is 0. Equals negative 4w plus 4w, another 0. Negative 2 minus 20 is negative 22. Divide through by, what are we going to divide by? Whatever's multiplying to w, 10 in this case. I get w equals, simplify the fraction. Please, please don't do a mixed number. Don't do decimals. Leave it as a fraction. Simplified. For everyone's sake. Both these have a 2 in them, so that's negative 11/5. And again, if you don't know how to simplify a fraction, use your calculator. Okay, now let's go over here and solve this one. Same thing, subtract 4w. That's terrible. From both sides. Subtract 20 from both sides. This time I get 2w equals negative 18. Divide through by a 2. I get w equals negative 9. Yay, we're done. Not. Check them. So this case, it's a good bit of stuff to type in. So I'm going to go ahead and write down my left side and my right side and make sure they equal. So I'm going to plug it in my calculator. So fractions, bunch of stuff to type in. Use the calculator. Negative 4, plug it in something, so stick it in parentheses. Minus 2. And this gives me 34/5. Sure, who knows? Whatever. And I'm going to see if that equals, I don't know yet, so I'm going to put a question mark. Whatever this thing gives me. 6, and what was it again? Negative 11/5. Stick it in parentheses. And this gives me 34/5. Yay, confetti. Party sound hats and those little tongue things. Let's check negative 9. So I'm going to go ahead and just cheat right here. Delete that, put a 9 there. It's negative 9? Negative 9. And my right side should be 34. Going backwards here, huh? Tricky, tricky. And you could just type it all in again, but I'm kind of lazy. 34, we're good. Both answers checked out. So, yep, now we're done. So absolute value, you should have at least seen it before. You might not be familiar with working with it, but it's not too terrible. It's really not. As long as you remember that it can equal a negative, ever. It's the absolute value, it's the distance from 0, and to check for extraneous solutions, you should be good to go. That's it for now.